crossed paths in neon rain. The perpetual rain of Nova Crescent turned the neon lights into shimmering pools across the pavement as Nevi made her way through the crowded streets. Her indigo skin, with its natural luminescent patterns, drew curious glances from humans, but she had grown accustomed to the attention during her 3 years as a courier on this planet. Pulling her waterproof hood lower over her silver-white hair, Nevi checked the delivery details on her wrist display. The package felt unusually heavy in her satchel. A small data crystal that her employer had emphasized was extremely valuable and time-sensitive. Something about this delivery felt different, dangerous even, but the Stellaris Courier Guild had strict rules. The delivery always came first. "Just get through tonight," she whispered to herself as she navigated through the crowded marketplace, the scent of exotic foods mixing with the metallic tang of the rain. "Then maybe take that vacation you've been promising yourself." The coordinates led her deeper into the Undercity, where the neon glow barely penetrated, and shadows became thicker between crumbling structures. Her species-enhanced vision helped her avoid the worst of the puddles and debris, but every instinct told her to turn back. A sudden burst of energy fire illuminated a side alley. Nevi froze, her dual hearts racing. Guild protocol was clear: avoid conflict, complete the delivery, do not engage with local disturbances. She should keep walking. Instead, she found herself moving toward the sound, her curiosity overriding her training. A human male was pinned down behind a waste container, returning fire against 3 attackers whose smooth black armor identified them as syndicate enforcers. The human was bleeding from his shoulder, his breathing labored. "Get out of here," he shouted when he spotted her, his dark eyes flashing with urgency. "This isn't your fight." Another volley of energy blasts struck near them, showering them with sparks. Without thinking, Nevi reached into her courier kit and pulled out her emergency flash disruptor. Technically only for wild animal encounters, but it would work on any species with eyes. "Cover your face," she called, and tossed the device into the open. The alley erupted in blinding light, followed by the pained shouts of the enforcers. The human was already moving, surprisingly fast despite his wound. As he passed Nevi, he grabbed her wrist. "You're with me now, they saw you help," he said grimly, pulling her into a run. "Name's Darien." "Nevi," she responded automatically, struggling to keep up with his long strides. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't find us," Darien replied, guiding her through a maze of back alleys and service tunnels that even her courier knowledge hadn't mapped. They emerged inside what appeared to be an abandoned maintenance hub, its systems still humming with minimal power. Darien secured the entrance before collapsing onto a bench, his hand pressed to his wounded shoulder. "You need medical attention," Nevi said, approaching him cautiously. "What I need," he winced, "is to know why a Stellaris courier decided to get involved in human business." His piercing gaze made Nevi uncomfortable. Humans couldn't read Stellaris microexpressions, but this one seemed unnervingly perceptive. "I don't know," she admitted. "It seemed wrong to leave you there." Darien's expression softened slightly. "Well, I appreciate it, though you've probably just made yourself a target." He nodded toward her satchel. "What's the delivery?" Nevi's hand instinctively covered her bag. "Client confidentiality is absolute in the Guild." "Even when the client is using you to transport illegal tracking codes for human trafficking?" Darien asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Nevi felt cold despite the warmth of the maintenance hub. "What are you talking about?" Darien struggled to his feet, moving to a small console in the corner. "The Syndicate has infiltrated your precious guild. They're using couriers, especially non-human ones who wouldn't recognize what they're carrying, to transport encrypted location data for their trafficking operations." "That's not possible," Nevi protested, though a sick feeling was growing in her stomach. "The Guild has safeguards, ethics protocols." "Money beats protocols every time," Darien interrupted, bringing up a sequence of images on the screen. "I've been tracking this operation for 2 years. Your data crystal contains the coordinates and security codes for a transport ship currently holding over 300 humans bound for the labor colonies." Nevi's mind reeled. Had she been unknowingly participating in something so horrible? She'd carried hundreds of data packages during her time with the Guild. How many of them had contained similar information? "I need that crystal," Darien continued, turning to face her. His eyes held no accusation, only determination. "I can use it to locate the ship and send in a rescue team before it leaves the system." Nevi hesitated. Guild rules were absolute. Breaking them meant excommunication, loss of all status and protection. But if what Darien said was true— "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked. Darien sighed, then pulled back his collar to reveal an intricate tattoo at the base of his neck. "Resistance Operative 3rd Division, specializing in anti-trafficking operations." He met her gaze. "I could have taken that crystal from you in the alley. Instead, I'm asking." Something in his eyes, a weariness, a pain that went beyond his physical wound, made Nevi believe him. Slowly, she removed the data crystal from her satchel and held it out. "If you're lying to me—" "I'm not," Darien said simply, taking the crystal with careful fingers. "Thank you." As he inserted the crystal into the console, the screen filled with coordinates, security codes, and manifest details. Nevi felt sick as she saw the number of cargo units listed. 327 people, Darien murmured, his fingers flying over the interface. "We have less than 6 hours before they're out of range." A soft alert chimed from the console. Darien swore under his breath. "What is it?" Nevi asked, moving closer. "They've tagged you," he said grimly. "Your courier ID is now flagged as stolen, and there's a retrieval order with maximum force authorized." Nevi's luminescent patterns pulsed with alarm, an involuntary reaction of her species. "They'll kill me." "They'll try," Darien confirmed, already gathering supplies from various compartments around the room. "The Guild and the Syndicate can't risk exposure. You know too much now." "Because of you," Nevi said bitterly. Darien paused, looking at her with unexpected gentleness. "Because you chose to help someone in trouble. Don't regret compassion, Nevi. It's too rare in this system." He handed her a small pack of essentials and a disruptor pistol that looked decidedly non-standard issue. "Can you use one of these?" Nevi took the weapon awkwardly. "Couriers are non-combatants." A faint smile crossed Darien's face. "You're not a courier anymore. You're whatever you need to be to survive." He checked the time display and grimaced. "We need to move. I've transmitted the data to my team, but we still need to get to the extraction point." Nevi questioned, her dual hearts racing. Darien met her gaze, something unreadable in his expression. "Unless you've got somewhere else to go, the Guild wants you dead, and the Syndicate will be hunting you across 3 sectors." Nevi thought of her small apartment in the mid-levels, her few possessions, the life she had carefully built over 3 years. All gone now because of one impulsive decision to help a stranger. "Why would you help me?" she asked quietly. Darien shouldered his own pack, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Because you helped me when you didn't have to, because I don't leave people behind." He held out his hand. "That's what humans call family." "We're not family," Nevi said, confused by the term. "Family isn't always blood," Darien replied, his hand still extended. "Sometimes it's who stands beside you when the whole universe is hunting you down." Outside, sirens began to wail as security forces swept the district. Time was running out. With one last look at the life she was leaving behind, Nevi took Darien's hand. "Where to now?" she asked. "First we stay alive," Darien said, leading her toward a hidden exit panel. "Then we save 300 lives after that." He gave her a sidelong glance that made her skin tingle strangely. "We'll figure it out together." As they slipped into the shadows of Nova Crescent's undercity, rain washing away their traces, Nevi realized that for the first time since arriving on this human-dominated planet, she wasn't alone anymore. Whether that was comforting or terrifying remained to be seen, but as Darien guided her through the darkness with surprising care, she found herself hopping this strange human's definition of family might be worth discovering. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Trust forged in danger. The undercity transport tunnels hummed with maintenance drones as Nevi and Darien made their way through the labyrinthine passages. The acrid smell of industrial cleaners mixed with the damp air, creating a noxious atmosphere that made Nevi's sensitive nostrils flare. She watched Darien navigate with confidence, occasionally checking a small device strapped to his wrist. "How much farther to this extraction point?" Nevi asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The luminescent patterns across her indigo skin had dimmed to their lowest setting, a natural defense mechanism of her species when threatened. "2 more sectors," Darien replied, pausing at a junction to check for patrol drones. "My team has a shuttle waiting, but getting there won't be simple." He glanced at her, concern evident in his eyes. "Your shoulder patterns are glowing." Nevi touched her shoulder self-consciously. "It happens when I'm stressed. I can't fully control it." "It's beautiful," he said simply, before turning his attention back to the path ahead. "But it makes you easier to track. Here." He shrugged off his outer jacket and handed it to her. "This might help." The jacket was still warm from his body heat as Nevi slipped it on. It smelled of him, a distinctly human scent that she found strangely comforting. She had never been this close to a human before, had never had reason to notice such details. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked as they continued through the tunnels. "You could have taken the data crystal and left me behind." Darien was quiet for a moment, his face half illuminated by the dim emergency lighting. "2 years ago, my younger sister disappeared. Took a job off-world that promised good pay, adventure, a fresh start. We lost contact 3 weeks later." He navigated around a broken section of flooring, extending a hand to help Nevi across. "Turns out she'd been trafficked to the mining colonies in the Eridani system. By the time I tracked her down," his voice tightened. "Let's just say I was too late." Nevi felt a wave of empathy wash over her. Stellaris could not cry as humans did, but her luminescent patterns shifted to a deep blue that rippled across her skin, her species' expression of sorrow. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "After that, I joined the resistance," Darien continued. "Promised myself I'd dismantle the entire trafficking network, whatever it took." His eyes met hers in the darkness. "So when I see someone willing to risk everything to help a stranger, someone who chooses to do the right thing even when it costs them everything, I notice." Before Nevi could respond, a patrol alert echoed through the tunnel ahead. Darien pulled her into a maintenance alcove, their bodies pressed close in the narrow space. She could feel his heartbeat, so different from her dual heart rhythm, racing against her arm. "Guild enforcers," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "They're scanning for your biorhythm." Nevi's fear spiked, causing her luminescence to flare briefly beneath the jacket. Darien placed a calming hand on her arm. "Steady," he murmured. "They can't detect you if you stay calm." She focused on controlling her body's reactions, a discipline all Stellaris couriers were trained in. Gradually, the luminescence faded as she synchronized her breathing with Darien's. The enforcers passed their hiding place, scanner drones humming ominously. When the sound had faded into the distance, Darien checked his wrist device again. "They've set up checkpoints on all the main exit routes," he said grimly. "We need to find another way out." "The waste reclamation tubes," Nevi suggested. "They run beneath this entire sector and exit near the spaceport perimeter." Darien looked at her with newfound respect. "How do you know about those?" "I've delivered packages to every level of this city," she replied, a hint of pride in her voice. "Couriers know every route, especially the ones not on official maps." A slow smile spread across Darien's face. "Lead the way, courier." The waste reclamation system was as unpleasant as its name suggested, dark, wet, and filled with the discarded remnants of city life. They sloshed through shallow channels of filtered water, careful to avoid the automated sorting mechanisms that occasionally whirred to life around them. "The transport ship leaves in 3 hours, Darien said, checking his communications. "My team has managed to delay some of the loading procedures, but not for long." "Will your people be able to save everyone on board?" Nevi asked. Darien's expression darkened. "We'll try. We always try." The unspoken reality hung between them. Rescue operations weren't always successful, and the cost was often measured in lives. They emerged from the reclamation tubes into a maintenance yard on the spaceport's edge. The vast expanse of landing pads stretched before them, illuminated by harsh floodlights. Security drones patrolled in regular patterns while workers loaded cargo onto various vessels. There, Darien pointed to a nondescript shuttle docked at a distant pad. "That's our ride." "There's too much open ground," Nevi observed. "We'll be spotted immediately." Darien studied the area, his eyes narrowing. "Not if we create a diversion." He pulled a small device from his pack. "Emergency beacon. If I activate this near those fuel cells, the automatic systems will trigger a containment protocol. All security will redirect there." "That's dangerously close to civilian areas," Nevi protested. "It won't actually explode," Darien assured her. "Just trigger alarms and lockdown procedures." Despite his reassurance, Nevi noticed the tension in his shoulders. "There's something you're not telling me." Darien hesitated. "The beacon? It has my resistance signature. They'll know I was here, which means..." "Which means you can't come with me," Nevi finished, understanding dawning. "You're sacrificing your escape route." "My team needs this information more than they need me," he said simply. "And you need a way off this planet before the Guild finds you." Anger flared within Nevi, causing her patterns to pulse beneath Darienne's jacket. "So you save me and sacrifice yourself? That's your plan." "It's the right call." "No," Nevi said firmly. "You said family stands together. Did you mean that, or was it just words?" Darienne looked startled, then thoughtful. "I meant it." "Then we find another way," she insisted. "One where neither of us gets left behind." For a moment, Darienne seemed ready to argue. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his battle-worn features. "You're pretty stubborn for someone who's only been a fugitive for a few hours." "I delivered packages through war zones and natural disasters," Nevi replied. "Couriers don't give up easily." They studied the spaceport together, looking for alternatives. It was Nevi who spotted the opportunity first. "The cargo transporters," she said, pointing to the automated loading vehicles moving between ships. "They're not scanning for life signs, just performing assigned tasks, if we can override one." Darien was already pulling out a small hacking device. "We'd need to get close enough to access one." "Leave that to me," Nevi said, slipping off his jacket and handing it back. "My species can modulate our body temperature to match our surroundings. It won't fool a direct scan, but at a distance, I'll register as ambient heat." Darien looked uncertain. "It's risky." "So is everything about this situation," she countered. "Trust me." Their eyes locked and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Finally, Darien nodded. "I've got your back," he promised. Nevi slipped out into the open, her body temperature dropping to match the cool night air, her luminescence completely suppressed. She moved with the fluid grace that had made her an exceptional courier, staying in the shadows whenever possible. When she reached the nearest cargo transporter, she signaled Darien. He approached more cautiously, keeping to cover until the last moment. Together, they attached the hacking device to the transporter's control panel. 30 seconds, Darien whispered as the device worked. Nevi kept watch, her senses heightened by adrenaline. She could smell the metallic tang of the spaceport, feel the vibrations of distant ships preparing for departure, hear the subtle changes in the patrol patterns nearby. "Something's wrong," she murmured. "The security drones are converging." Darien looked up from the device, eyes scanning the area. "They've spotted us." "No," Nevi said, her dual hearts racing. "They're heading for your team's shuttle." Alarm flashed across Darien's face. "It's a trap. They knew we were coming." The hacking device chimed softly, indicating success. Without hesitation, Darien pulled Nevi into the cargo compartment of the transporter just as security drones swept past their position. In the cramped, dark space, they lay pressed together, barely breathing. Nevi could feel Darien's heartbeat against her back, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. The ship with the captives, she whispered. Could they move up the departure? Chosen bonds. The massive transport vessel loomed against the night sky, its loading bays illuminated by harsh industrial lights as the final cargo was being secured. Nevi and Darien observed from their position behind a stack of shipping containers, the distant sounds of machinery and shouted orders carrying across the landing pad. That's it, the Helios Voyager, Darien whispered, checking the schematics on his device. According to the manifest data, they're holding the captives in the lower cargo hold, Section C. Nevi studied the ship, her enhanced vision picking out details that would be invisible to human eyes. Heavy security, at least 6 armed guards at the main ramp, and automated defense turrets positioned at all access points. The security codes from the data crystal should get us past the electronic systems, Darien said, but the guards are another matter. The wind shifted, carrying with it the acrid scent of engine exhaust and the metallic tang of weapon discharges. Nevi's senses sharpened. There's been fighting recently, your team. Darien nodded grimly. If they attempted the original plan, they would have been detected. He checked his communications device again, finding only static. We have to assume we're on our own. A sudden flurry of activity near the ship caught their attention. A group of official-looking figures emerged from a nearby shuttle, their uniforms marking them as high-ranking guild representatives. Final inspection before departure, Darien murmured. Once they clear the ship, it'll launch within minutes. Nevi felt her dual hearts racing, her luminescent patterns threatening to flare with anxiety beneath her clothes. We need a way to board undetected. Darien scanned the landing area, his expression intense with concentration. Then his eyes locked onto something. There, he pointed toward a small maintenance vehicle approaching the transport's underside. Atmospheric seal inspection, standard procedure before deep space jumps. They'll check the external hull seams, Nevi realized, understanding forming. Which means access to the emergency maintenance hatches, Darien finished, a hint of a smile forming. If we can reach that vehicle. They moved swiftly between cargo stacks and refueling stations, using the bustling pre-launch activity as cover. When they reached the maintenance vehicle, Darien disabled the operator with a quick, non-lethal strike while Nevi secured the unconscious worker. He'll be unconscious for about 30 minutes, Darien said as they donned the maintenance uniforms found in the vehicle. More than enough time if things go according to plan. And if they don't, Nevi asked, adjusting the oversized uniform. Darien gave her a sidelong glance, unexpected warmth in his expression. Then we improvise together. The word lingered between them, carrying more weight than its simple meaning should allow. Driving the maintenance vehicle beneath the massive transport ship, they activated the inspection protocols, their borrowed identification codes clearing the automated security systems. The vast underbelly of the ship stretched above them, dwarfing their small vehicle. The auxiliary maintenance hatch should be directly above us, Darien said, positioning the vehicle's lift platform. Once inside, we'll need to move quickly. The ship launches in 20 minutes. As the platform raised them toward the hatch, Darien suddenly reached over and took Nevi's hand. The unexpected contact sent a strange warmth through her, causing her luminescent patterns to pulse softly beneath the maintenance uniform. Whatever happens in there, he said quietly, I want you to know that you've already shown more courage than most people I've known my entire life. Before Nevi could respond, they reached the hatch. Darien entered the security codes from the data crystal, and with a soft hiss, the entrance unsealed. They slipped inside just as alarms began blaring across the landing pad. They've discovered the unconscious worker, Nevi guessed as they secured the hatch behind them. Move fast, stay silent, Darien instructed, leading the way through the narrow maintenance corridor. The ship's interior was a maze of service tunnels, cargo areas, and crew quarters. Following the schematics from Darien's device, they made their way toward the lower hold, avoiding the increasingly frantic security patrols responding to the alarm. When they reached the entrance to Cargo Hold C, Darien hesitated. The codes should work, but once we're inside, there's no hiding what we're doing. Nevi checked the small disruptor pistol he had given her. 327 lives, she reminded him, worth the risk. Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. Then Darien entered the final code. The massive cargo door slid open, revealing a horrifying sight. Stacked in narrow containment units were hundreds of humans, men, women, even some children, their expressions vacant from sedation, monitoring devices attached to their temples. "By the stars," Nevi whispered, her luminescence flaring with shock and anger. Darien was already moving, checking the control panel that managed the containment system. "They're on life support and minimal sedation, easier to transport that way." His voice was clinical, but Nevi could hear the rage beneath it. "I can initiate a gradual revival sequence, but it will take time we don't have." The ship shuddered slightly. Pre-launch preparations were underway. "Can you delay the launch?" Nevi asked, moving to help a young woman whose eyes were beginning to flutter as the sedation wore off. Darien worked frantically at the control panel, not without alerting the entire crew to our presence. His eyes met hers across the hold. "We need to make a choice, Nevi. We can't evacuate everyone before launch, not just the two of us." Understanding dawned. "We go with the ship," she said. "Continue the revival during transit, then take control when we have numbers on our side." A smile flashed across Darien's face. "Exactly what I was thinking." The ship's engines began their startup sequence, the vibrations traveling through the deck plates. They worked quickly, initiating the revival protocols for the first group of captives while securing the cargo hold doors. As the first humans began to regain consciousness, confused and frightened, Nevi found herself acting as a calming presence. Her alien appearance initially startling them, but her gentle manner winning their trust. "We're here to help," she assured a disoriented man as she helped him from his containment unit. "You're being rescued." Darien moved among the awakening captives, providing brief explanations and organizing them into groups. His leadership seemed natural, instinctive, and the frightened humans responded to his quiet confidence. The ship lurched as it lifted off, gravity systems compensating for the transition to space. Nevi stumbled, falling against Darien, who caught her with surprising gentleness. "Steady," he murmured, his hands lingering on her arms longer than necessary. "We've got a long journey ahead." Over the next few hours, as the transport ship moved away from Nova Crescent, they established a makeshift command center in the cargo hold. More captives were revived, those with medical or technical knowledge immediately helping others. "We need to gain control of the bridge before they realize what's happening in the hold," Darien said, gathering a small group of the more capable rescues. "The security codes should give us access to most systems, but the crew will fight back." "There's another option," Nevi suggested. "The life support systems can be controlled from this panel. We could isolate the bridge and crew quarters, reduce oxygen levels, not enough to kill, but enough to incapacitate." Darien looked at her with new respect. "Non-lethal and effective, can you make that happen?" "I was a courier, not a technician," Nevi admitted. "But," she gestured toward a woman who had been helping organize medical supplies, "Juna mentioned she was an environmental systems engineer before she was taken." Together, they implemented the plan. While Juna reprogrammed the life support systems, Darien and Nevi prepared a small team to secure the bridge once the crew was incapacitated. As they waited for the oxygen levels to do their work, Darien pulled Nevi aside into a small maintenance alcove. "You've done more than I could have ever asked of a stranger," he said quietly. "When this is over, when these people are safe, what will you do?" The question caught Nevi off guard. She hadn't thought beyond survival, beyond the immediate mission. "I can't go back to the guild," she said slowly. "My life there is over." "You could come with us, with the resistance," Darien suggested, an unusual hesitancy in his voice. "Someone with your skills, your courage, you'd be valuable." "As an asset?" Nevi asked, something like disappointment flickering through her. Darien moved closer, his eyes intense. As family, he said softly, if you want to be. The word hung between them, filled with meaning that transcended human language. Nevi's luminescent patterns responded, glowing with a warm, pulsing light that she couldn't control. Your patterns, Darien murmured, reaching out to trace the glowing lines on her visible skin. They're beautiful when you're emotional. It's embarrassing, Nevi admitted. Stellaris are supposed to maintain control, especially around other species. Don't, Darien said, his fingers gentle against her cheek. Don't hide who you are, not with me. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then Juna's voice came through the communication system. Bridge crew's oxygen levels at minimum. They should be unconscious by now. Reality rushed back. Darien stepped away, professional once more, though his eyes lingered on Nevi's face. Let's finish this, he said. The takeover went more smoothly than expected. The crew, incapacitated by the reduced oxygen, offered no resistance. With control of the ship secured, they set a course for a resistance outpost in a neutral star system. As the rescued captives settled into their temporary freedom, finding spaces throughout the ship to rest and recover, Nevi found herself on the observation deck, watching the stars streak by. Her reflection in the viewport showed her luminescent patterns glowing softly, no longer dimmed by fear or stress. Footsteps approached, and Darienne's reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. For a moment they simply stood there, alien and human, watching the universe pass by. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Nevi finally spoke. About family. And, Darienne asked, his voice carefully neutral. On my world we have genetic clutches, groups bonded by birth, but there's another concept, rarer but more valued, the Vashkata. She struggled to translate the complex term. Soul-chosen bonds, connections that transcend species, circumstance, even time. She turned to face him directly. I think what you call family, the chosen kind, might be similar. Darienne moved closer until they stood mere inches apart. And what do you think of that concept, of choosing your bonds rather than inheriting them? I think, Nevi said slowly, her patterns glowing brighter, that I may have found my Vashkata in the strangest of places, with a human who thought I was worth saving. The smile that spread across Darienne's face was like watching a star being born, gradual, then suddenly brilliant. And I, he said, reaching out to trace the luminescent patterns on her hand, found mine with an alien courier who thought a stranger in an alley was worth saving. As his fingers entwined with hers, Nevi felt something settle into place, a certainty, a belonging she had never experienced before. The stars continued their eternal dance beyond the viewport, and two beings from different worlds stood united by something stronger than blood, stronger than species, a family of choice. The ship sailed onward through the vast emptiness of space, carrying its cargo of renewed hope and possibility. Within its metal heart, an alien girl who had once believed herself alone discovered the true meaning of family through a human's eyes, and found that some bonds, once forged in danger and sealed with trust, could never be broken.